so I learned this whole process from being a stage seller, right? Getting on stage, traveling around the country and doing that. And then after like 3 years of it, I was actually in the Boise airport. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I was flying out somewhere and I'm sitting there in the airport all by myself. And I was sitting there on my phone, depressed. And I was like, this sucks really bad. I'm like, my wife, I just had twins at the time. Like my wife, my kids are home. I'm flying out again to go someplace, a bunch of people I don't want to hang out with, to go do a thing which is fun, and then go back to the hotel room and sit there for like another 18 hours before I get to fly back home. And I was like, I don't want this for my life anymore. And so I texted my wife at 1 in the morning. I said, I'm quitting speaking. This is my last time. And she wrote back, yeah, right. Love you. See you in a couple days. And so then my mind, the whole rest of that trip was like, how do I stop speaking and traveling? I don't want to keep doing that. So then it started transitioning to like, well, how can I do this more and more online? And so at the time, teleseminars is a big thing. So we're doing teleseminars, and then webinars came, and I got better and better at doing it on webinars. But for me, like that was the only way it kind of worked was just webinars, right? And the pitch and like everything we went through yesterday was something that's been evolving for the last 10 years for me. And it's kind of like the point where now it's like there's always little things we're changing, but it pretty much works. That's why we call it the perfect webinar. Like it's perfect. In fact, I've had probably 4 or 5 of you guys who like, I did the perfect webinar, it didn't work. I'm like, oh, why not? And then they show me and like, well, I changed this and I tweaked this. And I'm like, are you telling me I give you something called the perfect webinar? It's perfect. And then you changed it, like, duh. Anyway, so it's just perfect. It works like in every market like we've ever tried it in. So, but recently over the last probably 1.5 to 2 years or so, and the first time it happened out of kind of a fluke. I was, one of my friends, Mike Phil, some of you guys know him, he was launching a new product and he wanted us to promote it, and I wasn't going to, but he's like, when I first got started, he's like my first friend. We got started at the same time, and for the last like 12 years, like he's just been like my closest friend in this whole business. And so he's like, I really need your help, man. We're trying to do this thing. And he's like, we're doing an affiliate contest, and the winner gets a BMW and this whole thing, right? And I'm like, Mike, I don't want to promote, I don't have time, we're doing all this other stuff. Anyway, so it kind of left to that. And then he did the launch and people were coming and there's leaderboards and everyone's fighting and all stuff's happening. And he's like, man, you got to help. And I'm like, dude, everyone else has already promoted it. Like, it's kind of too late. And then I think it was like three or 4 days left in the launch before it ended. And he's like, dude, what's it going to take? Like, just do something. Like, and finally I'm like, all right, I'll do that. But there's only one condition. I was like, I don't really want a BMW. But a BMW costs, I think, about $50,000 when he had. I'm like, I do want a cryosauna, which is $50,000. If I win, will you buy me a cryosauna instead of BMW? And he's like, dude, you are so weird. And I'm like, he's like, what is it? I'm like, showing the pictures. He's like, so what do you do? I'm like, you get in it and you freeze yourself for like 3 minutes. It's really cool. And like he's like, whatever. If you win, I'll give you that. Fine. I'm like, all right, cool. So then I was like, okay, well, I got to promote this, but everyone and their dog's going to promote this thing for the last like 3 or 4 weeks. Like everyone I know has already bought it. Like, how am I going to come and compete in this like short period of time? And I was like, oh, I'm going to do a webinar. So I had this thought, I'm going to write a webinar. But then I got to the office and like the day went on. There's like so much stuff happening, and it takes for me, a couple of days to like really do a good webinar. And finally I was like, I don't have time to do it. And he kept messaging me, oh, you got to help me. And finally got down to like 48 hours left. He's like, come on, man, help me. And finally I was like, go. And then I had this like pop in my head. I was like, what if instead of like doing all the slides, what if I just opened up Facebook Live and I just did a webinar like off the top of my head and just see what happens? I was like, that's like the only shot I had left. So I'm like, okay. So I sat down in front of a whiteboard. Here's a picture of it. And I was like, okay, what's my one thing? And so he was selling automated webinar software. So this is not perfect, but this was with like 3 minutes of prep time. So it's pretty dang good. So I was like, okay, what's the one thing I get him to believe? I got to get him to believe that webinars are the future. So how to make that sexy? How to make at least 8 figures a year with this new webinar model. So I'm like, okay, so I wrote that on the whiteboard. All right, that's my one thing. Okay, what are my 3 secrets? Okay, what's their fear about that? And I wrote down secret number 1, and I wrote down that. Okay, what's their internal fears? And and secret number 2, I wrote that down. I was like, okay, if they buy from me versus everyone else, what should I give them? I'm like, okay, here's my offer. I wrote down this, and I wrote down that. And I wrote down all those things there. And then I took a little piece of white paper and I like covered up each of those little things. Melanie's like cutting paper and taping them in the back, and we're like taping them up. And then within like 5-10 minutes, we're like, okay, we got the webinar. And I was like, I can't remember if it was Brent, whoever had it. Like we had one phone on Facebook Live, one was on Periscope. And they stood there and they went, clicked, and they started it. And I was like, hey everybody, welcome to this Facebook Live. And I just did the whole thing. I'm like, I'm gonna talk about the and I talked about that. And I'm like, secret number 1, I talked about it. Secret number 2, and I talked about it. Secret number 3, and if you sign up right now, you're gonna get, and I pulled off the thing, you're gonna get this, and you're gonna get this. And I did the whole stack and whole everything. I think it ended up being 26 minutes and like 32 seconds was my entire time. And it ended, and I was like, whew. I'm like, dang. I was like, did anybody buy yet? And then I don't know, let's log in. So log in affiliate account, and sales were like, doom, 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 doom. And so then John jumps on, he's like, man, sales are coming like crazy. So he started boosting it. And over the next like 48 hours, we had over 160,000 people watch this. We did over $250,000 in commissions, and I won a cryo sauna, which was awesome. Yeah.